everybody. Welcome to Conscious Contact Speaker Group. My name's Kara, and I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic. Welcome home. Thank you all for being here. This is our special Labor Day meeting, and we have a really good lineup, and we have the best chairperson from Denver, Colorado. His name is Brian. Let's give him a warm welcome. Woohoo!
Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Brian, and I'm an alcoholic. Welcome to the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. This is a 1-hour speaker meeting that meets every Saturday night here at St. Paul's Lutheran Church. That's 301 North Main Street in Doylestown, PA. The food and the fellowship for this group starts at 8 o'clock every week, and the speaker comes on at 8:30. We have a business meeting for this group that meets every Saturday, 7 p.m. to 7:30, so feel free to come early, join us, enjoy the refreshments that we put out. The purpose of this group is to provide a consistent message of hope and recovery through God reliance and service to others through the practice and teaching of the 12 steps. We record all speakers so that others can benefit from their message of recovery. If you wish not to be recorded, simply ask. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. The group would like to welcome everyone, especially newcomers. Is there anyone that's new at this meeting for the first time or that's visiting from out of town that would maybe like to introduce themselves on a first name basis so we can get to know you? Yeah, in the back there. Welcome. Steve. Welcome. Yeah. Doug. Welcome. We got everybody in the back there. Yeah. Good. Welcome. Get everybody? Yeah. Welcome. We get everybody? Well, great. We're glad to have you here. The Conscious Contact Speaker Group encourages sponsorship. Would anyone with a working knowledge of the 12 steps and who is willing to sponsor, please raise their hands. So we got a lot of people willing to sponsor here. If you are new or you're just coming around or you're trying to get involved with this thing, grab one of those people after the meeting. We'll all be hanging out here breaking down the meeting, so we'd love to talk with you, get you some phone numbers, get you some meeting recommendations. Are there any announcements from the floor for the good of AA? Nothing? What'd you say? Yeah, there's a workshop September 21st in media. It's going to be a 12-step workshop. It'll go all day long. You can see Ron. He has more detailed information about it. Flyer for it? Okay, yeah, flyer. Yeah.
Hello, everybody. My name's Kara. On Labor Day, the Jaywalkers meeting is holding a Labor Day picnic that starts at 4. There's going to be a food truck, baseball, cornhole games, and the speaker comes on at 7. If y'all need a flyer, please see me. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. A couple quick announcements from this group. This group does have a sister group, which is a big book study group. It meets right up the road here on Thursdays at 7:30 at Salem UCC Church. That's 186 East Court Street. And the coffee for that meeting's on at 6:15. So again, feel free to show up early and join us if you want to get involved with that group, get into some service. We have meeting lists and big books on easy terms. Please see me or any home group member after the meeting. If you cannot afford a big book, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group will give you one at no charge. Anyone willing to make donations for the purchase of big books and CDs to those who can't afford them can put their donations in that jar on the back table marked Big Book and CD donations. All CDs are available free of charge. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Doylestown. We post the speakers from this group there, also speakers from a group we have 6 o'clock on Mondays, which is a step discussion speaker group. We got a Facebook page. You can follow us on there. It's a good resource to have. We post like happenings for this group, upcoming speakers, and a lot of other groups post their events, celebrations they have going on. So again, just a good resource to have to stay tied in with happenings in AA throughout the area. And with that, I believe Michelle is going to come up here. She's going to read our Just for Today prayer.
Hi everybody, I'm Michelle and I'm an alcoholic. Just for today, prayer of recovery. Just for today, I will be agreeable, I will look as well as I can, dress becomingly, talk low, act courteously, criticize not one bit, not find fault, with anything and not try to improve or regulate anybody except myself. Thank you. And I'd like to invite Will to come up for the preamble.
Hi, I'm Will and I'm an alcoholic. Alcohol Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. Now I have Rebecca to come up and read the 12 steps.
I'm Rebecca, I'm an alcoholic. The AA 12 Steps of Recovery. 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. 10, continued to take personal inventory and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Now Brian will introduce our speaker.
Okay, this group does have a 7th tradition. Every AA group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. Of course, there's no dues or fees for AA membership, but we do have expenses, and your contributions do help us to cover the cost of food, rent, big books, workshops, CDs, so we do appreciate it. There's absolutely no smoking on the church property. We have a good working relationship with the church. We're very blessed to be able to have this beautiful facility to hold the meeting in every week, and really all they ask is that we keep the premise clean, so just be mindful of that as you're coming and going from the meeting. Wait until you leave. Please take a moment to silence all cell phones and limit movement during the meeting to avoid distractions. And now to introduce our speaker for tonight, a good friend of the Conscious Contact Speaker Group, on loan to us from the Working with Others group of New Jersey. Please help me welcome Brad.
Brad here, an alcoholic. It's been through the grace of God, 12 steps, 12 traditions, very strong sponsorship, and a really great home group. I haven't felt necessary to pick up a drink since April 14th, 2014, and for that I'm often not grateful enough. I'll tell you guys a little bit about what I was like, what happened to me, and what I'm like today. I'll start when the problem happened. I was born. I don't have any memories growing up of feeling comfortable. I don't have any feelings growing up of feeling like I belonged, despite not being in a home that I should feel that way. I was raised by a single mother who might as well have been 3 parents. I grew up with an older brother and an older sister who, while pummeling me, were also telling me they loved me. There's really no reason why I should have felt this disconnection, why I should have felt uncomfortable in my own skin, but it is probably the first memory that I have is like showing up to daycare and the other kids just kind of like get dropped off, immediately go and play, and I'm as a 3 or 4-year-old thinking about how to like insert my way into all of these scenarios, how to say or do the right thing, the manipulation of how I can get them to like me. Because if you like me, then and I can get you to think a certain way about me, then maybe I'll feel that way about myself, right? And I very quickly start trying to find these different things that are going to make me feel comfortable in my own skin, that are going to make me feel that sense of connection, that I am looking for these immediate ways of self-gratification that are going to make me feel whole, right? And it starts with things as silly as, getting toys. If I have one, I have to have two. It makes sense because one has to play with the other, duh. Then it goes to things like food. Then it goes to things like, as soon as I'm old enough, then it's women, right? And at 17 years old, I on paper, I get everything that I think are going to be the things that are going to make me happy, right? Because leading up to this point, dozens of different therapists, dozens of different, things to try to get me to feel better. This was the whole conversation topic for years in my house. How are we going to get Brad to be happy? How are we going to get him to feel right? And 17 years old, I lose a whole bunch of weight, check box, that'll make me feel better. I get my license, that's going to make me feel better. I get a job, that's going to make me feel better. I start getting attention from girls, that's going to make me feel better. I join a band, that's definitely going to make me feel better, right? And I get all of these things. I get all of these things that are all of these acquisitions, right? And I don't feel whole. I don't feel better. I just feel like it's more of a caricature that I have to give you. And I go to my first real party. I'm from originally from Pennsylvania, and I'm from the thick woods of Pennsylvania. I'm from the Poconos, and the way you party in the Poconos is you go into the middle of the woods and you start a fire, and there's no cops for an hour drive, so you have enough time to make a quick getaway, and all of the communities are gated, so you can get away with a lot. And I got invited to one, and 2 weeks ahead of time, again, I'm calculated. I'm thinking about all the things I'm going to say, how I'm going to say it, how they're going to perceive me when I say this, right? This whole thing that's happening. And I pull up, and there's this hike getting towards this bonfire, and as I get closer, I can start to see the fire crackling through the trees. You can smell the wood burning, and my heart's beating out of my chest. I've never felt more terror in my entire life. And someone in the darkness of it all hands me a bottle of Jack Daniels, and I take my first real swig of alcohol. And what I can tell you about that experience, and I'm just going to share my experience, not my opinion, not my scholastic review of Alcoholics Anonymous, just my experience. I'll pause and say that I have a wife. I have 2 little girls that are they're the axis on which I spin, right? And my wife and I tried for about 5 solid years to have a daughter, to have a child. And there were many failed attempts. There were many miscarriages, many things that were going on at that time that it wasn't happening. So by the time she got pregnant with my firstborn, we thought it wasn't possible, right? And she gets pregnant, and we're waiting for the other shoe to drop. We're waiting for the next miscarriage, and sure enough, we get to the point where we're about to go to the hospital. We're like, well, probably what's next is we're going to lose the baby during childbirth, and she goes through childbirth, and my daughter's born, and now the worry is, well, maybe my wife won't make it, right? And long story short, daughter's born. wife is healthy, baby's healthy. I can't think of anything that I wanted more than this. My whole life growing up was to be a dad. And to have this child, what a miracle that was. I mean, saying it gives me goosebumps, right? And I remember the feeling. I remember the feeling of joy. I remember the feeling of elation. I remember crying like a little baby. But I don't remember what I was wearing that day. I don't remember what I ate that day. I don't remember what the temperature was outside. I don't remember what my wife was wearing. I don't remember what we wrapped the baby in. I don't remember what car we were driving. I don't remember what song was playing on the radio. I don't remember any of those details. I just remember being happy. But that night at 17 years old and having that first drink, I remember the guy that I never met before, that I never saw again. And I remember what he was wearing. I remember what I ate that day. I remember what I was wearing. And it's not everyone's experience, but my experience is that I remember every single detail of that night. And why? My daughter being born was a miracle, but it was not a spiritual experience for me. And if it was a spiritual experience for me, then I would not be here tonight. I would have had a daughter and said, see you later, and I would have never drank again. It would have been sufficient reason for me. And it wasn't. Despite how much, I can't think of anything that I love more than those three human beings. If there was any reason to stop, it would be them. And so I have that feeling at 17 where my whole life I feel like I'm underwater, like I'm holding my breath, like I just don't feel the way that I perceive that you feel. And this gives me an immediate treatment to that feeling. All of a sudden I am catapulted into the present moment. All of a sudden I feel like I'm I feel like I'm king of the mountain. I feel like I'm talking to all the guys that I normally felt uncomfortable to talk to. I feel like I'm everybody's best friend. I feel like I can go up to any girl at that party. I feel like I feel like alcohol gives me all of the things that I wanted to feel my whole life. And it was effective. Like I did feel ease and comfort, and it gave me the one thing that I was searching for, which was connection. Like I felt that unity in that moment. I felt a part of it. I felt in the present. And so I just kept chasing that. Within the first 6 months, I ended up in my first outpatient, and then I ended up in my first rehab, and I very quickly had to try to curb my drinking around people. I was alienating myself out of friend groups, right? And I, again, with sufficient reason, I would have these experiences of reasons why I should stop. I would get a job and lose the job, or I would get, this is the girl of my dreams, and that woman would give me 1, 2, 6 different ultimatums, and finally they would leave. And I felt like I couldn't stop. So instead of stopping, what I did is very textbook. Like I thought that my problem was whiskey. So I'll just try vodka. And when vodka didn't work, I'll try beer, because beer, like, it makes sense that, like, if I drink too much beer, then I'll get full, so therefore I won't be able to drink as much. That still makes sense to me. I tried all different alcohols. They weren't the problem. I tried geographical cures. I tried going to rehab in Florida. I tried having a much bigger friend that would follow me around, and if I drank too much, they would take it away. And then if I tried to, fight them for the alcohol, they would, have my spiritual permission to knock me out. I've tried throwing my keys into the woods that I wouldn't drive. I just steal other people's cars. I have tried everything other than being put in a locked up permanently. And so I did go to a rehab, and The important part was not that I got and stayed sober, because I did not. But up until this point, you know, I had wandered into meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I could get with the fact that my drinking was a problem. I could get with the fact that when I started, I couldn't stop. I could 100% get with that. But I thought that everything that I described, the 17 years leading up to my first drink, I think that is something separate. I think that is a way that I feel that despite what I do when I drink alcohol, I would rather that reality than having to live with the way that I feel. It is a necessary evil, is what I think. And so I go to this rehab, and I'm super uncomfortable. You know, it's my first time being away from home. I'm only 19 or 20 years old, and I sat in one of the rooms with the other patients, and typically what I would do when I would go to meetings is I would sit in the very back of the room, and I would say AA was not working while I was not doing any part of AA. I was coming to AA, but I was not in AA. I wasn't talking to anyone. I wasn't doing anything that I was uncomfortable, and you know, in a rehab setting, like I am stuck with these people. I'm stuck with them, and I maybe make it through a day before I'm sitting there in the, you know, common area, and I want to say I was observing, but I was eavesdropping. I was listening to other conversations that were happening, and they were talking about all of the feelings that I was talking about. They were talking about the spiritual malady that I didn't even know was a part of alcoholism. And it's the first time that I ever felt like people were speaking my language. It's the first time that I ever felt a part of without alcohol. And it was enough motivation for me, it gave me enough of a sliver of hope that I did whatever the rehab suggested. So I went through that program. I stayed for 90 days. I did textbook everything that they said to do when you get home. I went to a meeting my first night. I got a sponsor, right? I did all of those things. I still was just in a place where I wasn't in a place where I was going to surrender. Like, I wasn't. I wanted to do Alcoholics Anonymous in my way, which means I want to do, I don't want to talk about God, so like, can we, do step 1 and step 4, because I really want to talk about the people that I hate, and then I want to talk to you about the people that I hate, so we can do step 5. I don't have any character defects, so let's skip that one. I don't think any of these people deserve my presence, so let's skip over amends. Let's just do 1 and 4. Which isn't recommended, And again, I wasn't talking to anyone. I wasn't willing to do service. I wanted it to, be my program. And, I did end up working some steps with a sponsor, and I wrote out a very hollow 4-step, which was just every girl I had ever dated, and that was it. And then he said, will you go on a speaking commitment with me? And I said, sure. And then I never called him again. And like this here today, 10 years later, this is not like my favorite thing to do. This isn't, there was a time that if it was a matter of, and this is what it was at that time, if it was a matter of going out and carrying the message and going on a speaking commitment and having some uncomfortable conversations with people that I don't know, or what continuing to drink means, that I am the tornado ripping through everyone's lives, that my mother will not sleep until I'm dead, right? That I'm going to hurt every single person that I come in contact with, including myself. If it's a matter of just going up and speaking, or that, it's like, yeah, I think I'll hurt everyone instead. So I went out and again tried to prove that I could beat this thing, especially now that I have the knowledge of alcoholism. I think that just not driving is the issue. I try a whole bunch of different things that just end up not working. So this past time, within the last 6 months of my drinking, I got involved with who is my now wife, who is then my girlfriend, and she did what every woman before her had done. She gave me some ultimatums, and I'm a good manipulator, so I said, let's go like test it out. I think I could just have a couple, you know? Now, I didn't know that I couldn't have a couple at this point because I have never gone into a situation not prepared to hit oblivion. So I sit down with her, we go to a bar, which, you know, also was in disguise as a restaurant, and my wife is painfully non-alcoholic. Painfully alcoholic. She is the type of person that she spent about 2 months just sourcing all of these different ingredients for like some drink that she saw on Instagram, and she's sourcing it from all over the place. She's excited about it to try it. Two months of sourcing for this thing, and she makes it and she takes a sip and she goes, huh, and then that's it. That's it. Didn't touch another drop. And when she did that, I am, 6 or 7 years sober at this point, and I couldn't fathom it. I was insulted. So, that's the type of person that she is, and we sit down at this restaurant, and we kind of have this like deal that I will drink for I will sip for every sip that she drinks. And I will prove that I can, be normal. And again, she's painfully non-alcoholic. So like first thing we do, we get here and they give us menus, and she's like looking at the food, and I'm like, we got to get alcohol first, And she's taking her time, and she's like, throwing in some conversation. I keep saying, well, pick what you want to drink, pick what you want to drink, pick what you want to drink. And we both, get beers, and they bring the beers to the table. And at this point, I'm starting to sweat. I'm like my foot's, putting a hole in the ground, and she takes a sip, I take a sip, I'm like, okay, cool. And then she waits 10 minutes until she takes the next sip. And it goes on like that for the remainder of that beer. 10, 15, 20-minute intervals before sips. I've never been angrier in my entire life. I stopped loving her at that moment. I was not feeling into it at that time. And what I found, which I didn't understand because it didn't happen to me often, because when I started drinking, like I would get enough to finish the job. And in this situation, I didn't have enough to finish the job. And what I found is that my problems did not stop when I stopped drinking. My problems get a lot worse because I'm staring in the face of the person that I love, and honest to God, I hate her, right? And she's talking to me about her hopes and her dreams and her job and blah 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 and blah blah blah. And I hate you. I hate you. I don't want to talk about your day. I want you to drink. And I started noticing, like differences of like her hair and other things like that. Like I'm picking apart every single thing. And that's what happens to me when I stop drinking, is that I'm driving on the road and everyone's either driving too fast or they're driving too slow. I'm in a position where my boss isn't paying me enough, but they're also giving me too much responsibility, right? my perception is pretty skewed. And I build up this animosity towards everyone. I'm brimming over with anger, right? The restlessness, the irritability, and the discontentment. And at that point, it feels like I have two options. I have three options. One is murder. Two, I could kill myself. Or I'm gonna drink. Like, that feels like, it's not like a very like roomy, broad scope that I have here, you know? So I drink, and I think that I'm doing you all a favor, because like, you know, I didn't hurt anybody, you know? So after this, I go on another spree, you know? And I don't really, by the time I make it to the rooms, I remember waking up the morning of, and it's not a pretty sight. You know, I'm a rabid animal when I drink. I don't know how to explain it other than that. I am the type of person that I want to walk in somewhere and I want to start a fight. I'm peeing on random stuff. I'm stealing people's cars. Like, I'm not a fun time, you know? And I wake up, and my mother and my wife have fled the house. They took the dog. That's how scared they were. And there's holes all over the walls, and the fridge is toppled over, and it like when they talk about the tornado ripping through, that's what it looked like. It was just chaos. And I'm waking up out of a blackout, and it feels like I was on autopilot. It feels like some other guy like snuck in here and he crashed the plane. And now I'm getting blamed for it. When when it talks about it in the big book, it talks about that bitter morass of self-pity and quicksand stretched all around us. I couldn't possibly say it better than that. I have scared away my mother and my girlfriend and the dog, and I'm looking at all of the debris, and my immediate thought is all of how I'm being affected by this. That is like that has been my whole life up until that point, is just the insanity of how obsessed I was with myself is there was no end to it. And in this moment, and when they talk about the quicksand part of it, right, is I have woken up multiple times like this before, and the reason why they describe it as quicksand is because what happens when I try to get myself out of quicksand? I start to struggle. I sink deeper. And that is what has happened to me every single time. I think that because I went to rehab, because I went to 5 meetings, and I've got the knowledge about my problem now, that I can solve it. I think I can just will it away. And this is the first time that I remember looking up at the ceiling, and I remember asking for help, and I am the guy that would go into bars and have violent arguments about God, about the non-existence of God. Because I thought you were stupid if you believed in God. And I'm clearly more intelligent. And I looked up at the ceiling and I asked for help to, I didn't even have a belief. And I just was so desperate. I was so beaten that I asked for help. And, shortly thereafter, I went into a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, and this is the environment of the meeting that you guys have here is something special. Not every single meeting that you walk into, someone is going to come up and shake your hand and say hi, and the energy is we're excited to be here. Because I've walked in other meetings, nothing against those meetings, but I've walked in other meetings, and Not a single person has come up, right? And I walked into this meeting. I showed up to this meeting 2 hours early so that I could sulk in the car. Because it says in the book, like, these are not always easy alternatives to face, right? I know what is in store. I have come in the door before. I have looked at your steps and I've said, this sucks. Or, drink myself to death. And I'm like, well, what's death anyway, And I walked into this meeting and I sat in the very back of the room, and I am extremely fortunate that the guy that was leading the meeting, now this meeting is all guys who grew up together. One by one, they've like slowly gone sober. It is high school reunion at this meeting, right? And they're all, chatting, they're a little bit clicked up. And this guy breaks away from the conversation he's having and makes a beeline right for me. How he could tell I was new, I don't know. Maybe it was the fact that I didn't look up, I probably smelled a little bit. I had that vibrating new guy look to me. And he came up to me, and in this, it's like such a... It seems so simple that it's like this 2-minute interaction that I was like, yeah, I guess I'm gonna do like what I have to do in AA and just go up to this guy. And that's probably what he had on his mind. But that like 1 minute, that split-second decision that he made to stop his conversation, to come up to me, not only did it save my life, but the ripple effect of the guys that I have gone on to sponsor, the guys that they have gone on to sponsor, the fact that I am a husband and a dad today, and my mother is able to sleep well at night. Like the ripple effect is so enormous from just that little tiny thing that he did. And he came up to me, he shook my hand, he introduced himself, he made me read the preamble, which I spent the duration of the meeting hating him for. And right after the meeting, I put the reading down on my chair and I'm ready to book it. And he teleports from the beginning, he teleports from the front of the meeting, and like I turn around, he's right here, right in my face. And the home group that I'm coming from is working with others, and we are known to corner some guys into sponsorship. And he was not. When I say that he was right here, I mean that he was between me and the doorway. There's no escape. And he asked me if I had a sponsor. And as I started on the letter N, he said, cool, I'll be your sponsor. And I was new enough that I didn't know that you could say no thanks. So I said cool. And he did some like really cool things that like maybe seem a little bit drastic, but again, just sharing my experience. And what he did was he gave me a big book. He said, you're going to read the first 64 pages, and then we're going to get together and we're going to do steps 1, 2, and 3. And he said, starting tomorrow, you're going to call me at 6:30 every day. Every day, 6:30. Repeat it after me, 6:30 every day. I said, okay. And I called at 6:31, and he picked up and said, principles before personalities, and then he hung up on me. And he was really emphatic that I start learning that I am a selfish, self-centered person, and that he's taking time out of his day at 6:30, and that's my call time. And I was so wrapped up in self that I couldn't understand what the principle was behind it, but I pretty quickly learned. And he also told me, put on a suit when you go to speak. He said, when you go celebrate, when you get up to a podium, imagine my relief when I walk in tonight and I am not the only one in a suit, because usually that is the case and everyone looks at me like, huh, So that was nice. I sit down with him and we talk about step one, right? And at this point, like we read the doctor's opinion and we talked about the spiritual malady, we talked about the obsession of the mind, we talked about the phenomenon of craving. I could get with the obsession of the mind, I could get with the phenomenon of craving. I have tested it, right? I have gone out to test it. I have done the mad alchemy to prove that it works. For all those wondering, I did it. And he says, great, first part of the first step. He said, and when we talk about like the unmanageability, I think that the unmanageability is when I drink, I do crazy stuff. I crash cars, I put my head through walls, like, I'm a little crazy, He's like, yeah, sure, all of that, 100% unmanageability. He said, can you tell me what your significant other's favorite color is? I said, no. He said, can you tell me when your mother's birthday is? I said, nope. He said, when was the last time that you thought about anyone other than yourself? And I could not really, I couldn't tell him. I can tell you that all of my memories with my siblings are only the ones that involve me. I don't know anything about my siblings' lives other than the memories that involve me. But if you were to ask my sister, who's normal and not selfish, she remembers like what my favorite action figure was growing up. The unmanageability is that I can't, the level of the fear that I have is crippling. The fact that I can't have a conversation with you and not be in my head trying to say what I think that you need me to say so that I can get the reaction out of you is unmanageability. The fact that even the person that I really can't stand, if they have a party and they don't invite me, I'm like, oh, should have invited me, right? I need even the person that I don't like to like me. I need to be invited to the places that I don't even want to go. It's all unmanageability, right? All of that fear, all of the anxiety, all of the self, which I didn't think I was selfish. I thought I'm the guy that like I hold doors open for people. And I want a thank you. And if you don't say thank you after I hold the door open, I think about, slashing your tires. I want you to think that I'm a good person, right? So that's why I do the good things, because I want you to think that I'm great, that I'm good, right? So we start talking about step 2, and I like leading up to meeting with this guy, I am already like, all right, I know he's going to ask me about God, and I'll tell him, yeah, I have God in my life, and he's great, he's my homie, whatever, like this. Because like in a sponsorship setting, right? For all of the past times that I've sponsored, I want to be liked so much that a sponsorship setting, like I want this guy to like me. I want him to tell me that I'm super sober. I want him to, put his arm around me and say, you're great, So I'm going to tell this guy all the things that, like, I think that he wants me to be saying and feeling. So when he, in past times when a sponsor has asked me, do you believe in God? I'm like, sure. And I'm not willing to be honest, because I'm not willing to deal with the ramifications of me saying something that you don't like. And he asked me the question. I have like, I have the loaded chamber of like what I'm going to say, and I answer honestly, which I don't know where that came from, but I said, I'm not going to tell you God doesn't exist, but. I'm going to tell you that if there is a God, and we're all his children, I think that I'm from the first marriage. I think that he's sending me postcards. I think that he like sends me, presents here and there. But like he's moved on to the other family. I'm kind of like collateral damage here. And he let me go on a tirade like that. And he said, okay, He just nodded his head, and I could tell he was like only half listening kind of thing, And he said something really important. He said, are you at least willing to believe that there is something working for me in my life? And before this, he had shared his experience, strength, and hope. He shared the craziness that he was, his inability to control his drinking, and then where he was at this moment. And when I say where he was at, it means that I didn't go for the guy that had the nice car and the beautiful wife and the big house. I mean, I'm sitting across the table from a guy that has a garbage bag as his window in his car. He lives in his mom's basement. Like he's making maybe $5 an hour. Like he didn't have any of the things, the things that I wanted, but what I didn't know that I wanted the most was while I sat across the table from him, I could see it in his eyes that he did not care what I thought about him. Not for a second. He had this ease and comfort about him, that sparkle that was in his eye, that there was something that I could not rattle him, and I wanted that so badly. I wanted that freedom. And I said, yeah, sure, and he said, cool, let's get on our knees and do a third step. It's like, this is the most comfortable position I've been in with another man. So I did it, begrudgingly, and he knew how full of self I was. Again, this seems very drastic, but this is just my experience. He knew how hyper focused I was on how I think that everyone is focused on me, right? I'll give you an example. If I walk into a room and there's a person laughing in the very back corner, and I'm talking about a big auditorium. If I walk into an auditorium of 600 people and I walk in and there's 5 people laughing in the back, my mind immediately says, they're laughing about me. And then I spend the rest of the time that I'm in that auditorium thinking about how much I hate them because I know that they're laughing about me, right? So he has me do my third step in front of his car with his headlights on while the rest of the meeting is entering the meeting. And you know what? He was right, because when I walked into the meeting, no one said a word, no one cared. He's trying to instill in me that I am not that important. And so he has me write out a 4th step. I'm like, yes, now we've gone to the good stuff. And I write out my list of all the people who suck. There were a lot. And I'm really excited. I'm armed with the best one at top. My dad, not around. He's a jerk. We all know he's a jerk. Let's just move on, And I talk about all the ways that my dad is a terrible, terrible, terrible father. Also a terrible human being. And I gave him all the details of why he is. Why am I doing that? Because I want to sway the jury. I want him to say, you know what? He sounds awful. You're right. It's not what he did. He let me go on for a little bit and he said, well, how can you be a better son? I was like, yeah, but did you hear what I said? He said, that doesn't matter. He said, at what point in time did you ever call your father and try to have any sort of relationship? I said, well, he said, did you stop talking to him for 3 or 5 years? And I said, yeah. And it went that way for every single resentment. Every single one. Every single one. And so during that process, we talk about all the character defects, which I didn't think I had many, but apparently I have many. And I go home and I do what the book says. I meditated. I reviewed all of the things that we had talked about up until that point. Which means I went home and I went to sleep. That's the reality of what really happened. I know every time I'm meeting with a guy, I'm like, all right, so you're going to go home and you're going to meditate for an hour, right? And they go, yeah. Then the next morning they tell me, yeah, I did. I'm like, you went to sleep. You immediately went to sleep, right? So I talked to him the next day and I start writing out all the people that I'm going to make amends to. Copy and paste from my resentments, and one of the people that I was unwilling to make amends to was my father, right? And I in sobriety, it wasn't the first one that I did, but I eventually got to go and make amends to my father for where my mistakes were in the resentment. My making an amends with my dad did not render my father a good person. He didn't all of a sudden say, you know what, I'm going to change. He didn't. My dad is the same exact person that he is, but I no longer have the inventory about it. I no longer carry it around. And what I can also say is that the first like year of going up and doing talks and sharing like what my experience was like growing up, my perception of what my home life was has dramatically shifted. Because today what I really feel like is that my dad was just a guy that tried his absolute best, and he gave me the absolute best that he could. And I came with very heavy expectations of how I thought he should be parenting me. And when he didn't meet those expectations, I retaliated. And today my dad can be whatever dude he is, and I'll be whatever dude I am, and like we'll meet somewhere in the middle. '10, 11, I very neatly evaded for about 6 or 7 years, right? And then I jumped right into sponsorship. I was very excited to sponsor, and sponsoring for a long period of time was my higher power. Like sponsoring was, the group of drunks thing is what I did. And it worked until it didn't. And what I can say is that at about 3 years sober, this is not a very fun place to be in, but I was going to meetings, and because I was so super sober, I would sit in meetings and pick apart every single thing that you were or were not doing. And what happens is I start to disconnect from that meeting. I think that I'm better than, I'm smugly superior, and I altogether pretty much stop going to meetings because I am so sober and you're so not. It was a really, really, really dark place. It feels like purgatory to be sober and not be drinking, but also feel so completely separate from there was no home group. And my first sponsor, he kept calling me over and over and over again, let's go to the speaking commitment, let's go to the speaking commitment, let's go to the speaking commitment. And I kept saying, no. This is a little detox that's used to be in our area in New Jersey. And like most detoxes, it's 3 days in. Like they're cycling them through, right? And that bands that I was originally in Pennsylvania, granted, like now I'm living in New Jersey, almost an hour and a half away from where I grew up. The guy that I was in a band with in Pennsylvania, I met his brother one time. Divorce, like one went with the dad, one went with the mom, and the brother never came this way. I met him one time. I drank from Pennsylvania all the way to Maryland, so by the time he met me, I was foaming at the mouth, right? His only experience of me is that. And I begrudgingly, finally agreed to do this speaking commitment after months of turning my back on AA, not wanting to rely on any sort of God. The word still makes my hair stand up. And I begrudgingly agree to go to the speaking commitment. I begrudgingly put on the suit. I begrudgingly do a talk that I bombed. And afterwards, this goofy guy comes up to me and he goes, "Brad?" And I go, "Yeah." And it's the brother. That means after 3 or 4 months of being completely separate from Alcoholics Anonymous and finally agree to do a detox that's a 3-day in and out, and an hour and a half from where I live and 4 hours from where he lives, he ends up at the detox at the exact same night. And all of my, God's, it's kind of stupid. It's like, sure, I could say it's like this grand coincidence, but I at that point, I would just rather believe that God was doing for me what I could not do for myself, that God put this guy in my life, and he saved my life. I went on to sponsor him for, on and off for 3 years, and he lit me on fire about Alcoholics Anonymous. And I have not stopped being on fire about Alcoholics Anonymous since. And if you're not on fire about AA, then go sponsor some people so you can feel on fire about it. Because I don't want to just sit in the back of the room and just take up space. I want to enjoy being here. I want to feel what it feels like to love Alcoholics Anonymous. It is a whole different experience. And I have done that, and because of that, my relationship with God A word that I couldn't even say has grown so exponentially. And it wasn't immediate, you know, and I don't even know what God is. I think that's why we have such a good relationship. I'm not trying to define him. Because I stopped playing God. So, what life is like today, I can tell you that it is not, it's not free of selfishness. You know, I would say that every single morning I wake up and the game resets. And that means that I wake up and despite all of the work that I may have done yesterday or last year or last month or whatever, it resets. And my natural disposition when I wake up is me. Screw you, it's about me. When my daughters wake up and they're, you know, this is about me. And I have to immediately, this is, again, just my experience, that when I don't wake up and I don't immediately ask God, please help me. Please help me. I'm going to mess this up. I can feel it already. And I share a gratitude list with some guys that are in my network. And I have guys that call me in the morning very, very, very purposefully. It's not because it's really convenient. It's because I need to talk to another alcoholic, sometimes before my feet even hit the ground, because I just can't escape this. And I talk to another guy, and he's talking about himself. I'm like, oh, Jesus. And then what ends up happening is that my wife asked me to do something, and I'm not too busy, and I'm not too inconvenient, so I'm like, okay. Oh, okay is the word that living in 10, 11, and 12 has given me. That I'm able to say okay, and I'm able to say okay without putting it on the scoreboard, see how much I'm doing and see how much you're doing, right? I spent many years in sobriety thinking that, well, now I'm sober, so like I should be successful, right? These employers, like they should be paying me lots and lots of money because I'm really sober, you know? And so what I would do is I would go and I would get a job, and within like 3 months they weren't paying me what I thought they should be paying me, and then I would go to another job. So my resume over like a 2-year span was 8 jobs. That's not an exaggeration. And finally, I started working with my current sponsor about 3 years ago, and one of the first things he said was, we're not going to have you write out inventory because you still like can't stop thinking about yourself, so why don't you try to go like lean into God and go sponsor guys. And what life is like today is that I've had the same job for 2.5 years. I'm not pounding on their door for raises or whatever. I am just trying to be of service when I'm there. And it is a whole different world to just show up and say, I'll do whatever you want me to do, and whatever you pay me, cool. And I feel no anxiety about it. That I work from home, there's alcohol all through my house, and there isn't even the thought. That is a gift I take for granted on a regular basis, that I can't remember the last time that I have thought about drinking. Something that I could not stop every single day, that has been, as promised, removed. That my kids have never seen me drink, which is an absolute blessing. That my wife can trust that when she needs to go somewhere, sometimes for days on end for work, that I am responsible enough that I can take care of our kids. And maybe not most importantly, but I can stand up here, and despite the fact that before the meeting I was vibrating with anxiety, and that never goes away, right? I still feel it every time. That when I'm up here, I ask God for help, and then it just melts away. And I love every single one of you. But I can say at least 90% of me is, although I love you, I don't care what you think about me. And that is a true gift of Alcoholics Anonymous. That is a true gift of the freedom that I was promised if I'm willing to do the things that are listed. So with that, I'm gonna shut up.
Okay, evening again, everybody. Again, Brian, alcoholic. First and foremost, I want to thank our speaker, Brad, for coming out here, delivering an incredible message of hope and recovery to our group here tonight. A couple quick announcements, and we'll close down the meeting. As was mentioned, the food and the fellowship for this group starts at 8 o'clock every week, so feel free to show up early and join us if you want to get involved with some service with this group. We could always use people to help out. There's always service positions available. There's always a meeting after the meeting again, so again, if you're new, hang out here, grab somebody. It is customary for us to thank our speakers because they do come here on their own time and expense, so we usually form a line in the front. We thank our speakers. And with that, if you care to join me in Lord's Prayer. But yeah, we're going to circle up. We'll join hands, and if you do care to join us. And with that, we'll close down the meeting, as always, with a brief moment of silence for the still sick and suffering alcoholic inside and outside of these rooms, followed by our Lord's Prayer. Our Father,